Hey, this is Jack, and today I thought I would do something a little bit different and poke a little bit of fun at my former self. Some of you will know this, many of you won't. I did put out a lot of videos on YouTube that got close to zero traction for a number of years. It's one of the reasons why I'm always grateful for the response that I have now, and one of the reasons I don't take it for granted. So I'm going to show you a video that I shot in fall 2014. At the time, I lived right on the bay, the San Francisco Bay, up in Costa Contra County, and it was a really cool spot because I basically woke up and went to sleep with the sounds of water lapping, and it also made it really easy to shoot videos with this kind of serene setting. So that's the context. The video is it's called Jack Butler on Single Focus Environments. SFEs. This is something I used to talk about because I used to talk more about productivity and life management and self-management. And yeah, let's check this out. Here we go.
Good morning, this is Jack Butler. Thanks for tuning in. It's a really peaceful day here.
It's kind of ironic I say thanks for tuning in because literally
out
this
on the water,
is,
so I thought I'd use that as a chance to talk about the environment, inertia and wisdom. You might be wondering if there's any relationship between the three. Well, I'm at least going to lay down a case that there might be, and you can take it or leave it. I was talking a little bit yesterday about soul focus environments and how the environment
One of the things I appreciated back in the day is I paid zero attention really to marketing or positioning. So there would be something that might be of interest to me. So I'm going to talk about the relationship between inertia, environments, and wisdom. As if anyone gets up in the morning and starts thinking about, I wonder that curious trifecta that I couldn't sleep about last night, inertia, wisdom, and environments. So it makes me smile sometimes because there's a real earnestness in this guy. You know, he's talking about stuff that he's thinking about, but it's a little bit disconnected from what anyone else is thinking about.
Spiritual world, you know, we talk about being present to the moment and with an ability just to respond naturally and easily with what needs to happen in the moment, and that's all well and good, absolutely, and sometimes that gets conflated with a sense that we can't be good planners, because one of the ways in which the mind loses presence is future anticipation or unconscious planning. Sometimes we can throw the baby out with the bathwater, which is to make planning the enemy. Conscious planning, where you've sat down to decide, I need to take some time to...
I mean, one nice thing that I'll say about this guy is that perhaps a lot of the stuff that now for me is sort of like deep structure, you know, whether that's an appreciation of the Enneagram or an integral worldview or thinking in terms of stages of development or the power of presence, or the context within which we can do inner work. Like, this guy was figuring a lot of that stuff out, and so it's it's been great to have that foundation. And there's a lot of stuff that I almost don't need to talk about front and center because it's kind of gone back there. But at this time, I kind of did. So it's a pretty niche conversation.
Plan my day, plan my week, do my business plan is obviously a really important human skill. You know, it's a frontal cortex skill, and we don't want to chuck that out with the baby in the bathwater, because I'm a real fan of hard scheduling, of using your calendar to actually purposefully...
This guy is he's more cerebral in a certain kind of way. He's a certain flavor of British cerebral. Conscious planning is when you consciously plan some things. I couldn't hear it at the time. I don't even know what I sound like now. Right now I'm just this kind of global transatlantic kind of mix of English, American and English. But yeah, there's a particular way that this lands with me that I get how British people land to other people, particularly when they sound like this, in a way that I didn't then. And it has an impact on me now, actually, when I hear people talk just like this. It's sort of like, oh, okay, it's kind of, yeah, jolly, frightful, it's up here, quite intellectual. There we go.
Trying to plan my day, plan my week, do my business plan is obviously a really important human skill. You know, it's a frontal cortex skill, and we don't want to chuck that out with the baby in the bathwater. Because I'm a real fan of hard scheduling, of using your calendar to actually purposefully, meaningfully, authentically shape your life in the directions that you want it. I remember 3 years ago reading Cynthia Bourgeault, the Christian mystic author, and her talking about wisdom as the ability to move between states of consciousness and not get stuck in any particular one. I think that's a great definition of wisdom. I don't think it's the only definition of wisdom, but I think it's an important part of the wisdom jigsaw.
That made me laugh. I think this is an important part of the wisdom jigsaw, because I'm sure a lot of you have, set your alarm an hour earlier this morning so that you could contemplate the wisdom jigsaw. That aside, I do actually think that what I'm talking to there is a pretty cool thing. And this ability to move between different states, almost like now I'm meditating, now I'm preparing food, now I'm eating my breakfast, now I'm on a phone call, now I'm coaching a client, now I'm getting dressed, now I'm being present to my friend, now I'm having intimate time with myself, now I'm having intimate time with someone else. There's sort of now this, now this, now this, and that there's not like a residue that's following you around. It's actually hard to do, but I think it's a worthy endeavor.
How many times have I noticed my own inertia? That when I'm on a particular path, like when you're on a night out and you're on a roll, you keep going on your night out, and then maybe the next morning you're more hungover.
Those are the days, more hungover than you need to be. It's been a long time since I was hungover.
Than you need to be. Or if you have extended period of time at home, it might start as this very rejuvenating, restorative, contemplative thing, but after a long weekend of it, you're actually so much in your kind of own world and own process that you need to really bust out and reconnect with what's out there in the world, and reconnect with other people, and reconnect with their issues. Solopreneurs staying at home too much, we can often stew on our own issues.
So one thing I want to draw attention to, because I've noticed it through the amount of coaching that I've done, you'll notice that here I'm talking a lot in second person. You'll do this, you'll go for a night out, and then you'll realize, and then you'll find. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just unconscious. And one of the things you can practice is consciously owning what you say by putting it in I statements. I go out, I have found this, I have had this experience, I have wanted this, I do want this. For any of us that have the habit of being over there with other people, perhaps putting other people's needs and wants first, losing ourselves in our connections. This can be a really powerful practice, starting with I statements. Once you practice this, you'll notice it more easily in yourself and other people.
And that's what I mean by inertia, because if you're anything like me, it isn't obvious to you that that you value certain things, or that you miss certain things, or that you'd really benefit in a compensatory or balancing way from being in certain states or environments or kind of lines of attention.
So I'm losing myself here. I'm like, what is this guy talking about? It's very cerebral and meta, types of things, sorts of environments. There's a little bit of like, can we bring this down to earth?
Kind of until belatedly you're back there. I was just doing some tidying up last night and sorting through a whole load of office stuff, and it occurred to me that was really overdue. That wasn't so overdue that that it was out of control, but it was overdue in the sense that it stopped being as effective as the system could be, and in the way that sometimes, I'm not going to get into the detail, but for those of you that know, I work with the 3 instincts: the self-preservation instinct, the instinct that has to do with home and maintaining foundation, and generally maintaining things and putting the time and attention into sort of keeping order and stability. That's often the least dominant instinct or instinctual awareness for me. So I really benefit. I have a thing called a big admin buster day. Once a month on a Friday, I calendarize out just to do admin stuff. I really benefit from that, the power of using my calendar to have me shape what I want to put my attention on, to have me.
So, by the way, if you haven't ever studied the three instincts, it's really powerful. I recommend it. It's one of the most powerful tools I've come across to explain the things that are getting our attention that we don't necessarily even know are getting our attention, like unconscious attention patterns. The three instincts is a powerful place to look. It's part of the Enneagram world. Check it out if you haven't. I'm also still having a little bit of experience of where's this going, Jack?
Shape, which practices I'll engage in, which if left to my own devices and sort of spontaneously, I wouldn't engage with them. And this isn't just to do with admin and tidying the office. If I've had a period of time where I'm working really hard, and particularly if I feel like I haven't quite achieved the thing that I want to achieve that day, that week, it's harder for me spontaneously to recognize the value and the sort of heartfeltness that I'll get from going and having dinner with friends. And yet that might be the absolutely most important thing that I need to do in order to maintain balance and to kind of reconnect with what's really important, because when you get fixated in one line of attention, it can seem to you like you're really on it, or you're really driven for something, or you're really kind of clear in a slightly frustrated way what it is you want to do. But I want to submit that often that you're myopic in your attention, and that actually you've forgotten that there's a whole set of other things that are really important to you, and that if you felt more rejuvenated and attended to in those areas, this thing that you're working on would actually come easier to you.
So there's a good point in there. Again, it's a little dry and a little, it's kind of amorphous is how I'm experiencing this version of me. But what I'm talking about there, that when you get fixated in a certain pattern, it's often the thing that you don't think of as the thing that you need, right? So you're kind of working really hard on your project and you kind of forget, like, actually going to be social, going and spending time in nature, yoga, meditation, having a break is the thing that will actually fill my cup up. Similar thing, by the way, in relationship, right? Where if it's, I'm not getting what I want in relationship, am I looking at these other love buckets, right? Rather than having complaints over here, am I filling my own self-love tanks? Am I connecting with friends? Am I so on and so forth?
Because you'd actually be bringing a kind of a cleaner, more uplifted, less fixated energy to it, just a more expanded awareness, not one that's kind of, this has to happen now. And that's not to undervalue sticking at one thing for a long period of time. Obviously as someone who has an entrepreneurial catalytic energy, I can sometimes find that hard. But, my work is around full spectrum living. It's about living that pays attention to everything that's important for you. Our internal world, the external world, what we contribute into the world.
It's kind of modelly. I'm remembering, around this time I had a girlfriend who had a project for me and she called it Unzip the Bread. And I totally get why that was an important project. I kind of almost want to have that happen for me as well.
World, how we are with our own personal inquiry and deepening in our own path of the essential expression of who we are. Friendship, love, business, consciousness, all lines of development, all our centers, the three centers we talk about, all our instincts, at least the three instincts that I'll talk to you about that come from the kind of Enneagram world.
I used to be a bit fixated at this time on this notion of full spectrum living. It's actually why I call my company that. This notion that we can improve in different domains of our development, our social development, our intellectual development, our emotional development. It's kind of reified, like it's kind of like a cerebral conceptual way of looking at us that is just less interesting to me now. I'm not trying to optimize across all these channels all the time. It seems a bit removed from what do you want? What's the problem? What's happening? What's here and now? What am I present to?
So how do we attend to all those things without becoming so fractured in our attention? Because we're kind of filtering for so many things that actually we don't get things done. That's going to be a topic of another video that I do.
Can't wait.
How to be in the world, paying attention to more things whilst also still maintaining kind of focus and traction. But the invitation this morning is really to notice if there are things in your life that you habitually under-attend to, and what the relationship between that and your hard schedule or your calendar is, the things that you actually block out and commit to on your calendar or diary. In Brit speak. So
this is actually an important point. I don't talk about this much at all now in videos or even in my coaching because it's so much more focused on relationships and authenticity and inner work. But one of the ways of talking about a more authentic life is what is showing up on your calendar. And the point I'm trying to make here is there are things that constantly are difficult for you: health, money, work. How is that showing up on your calendar? So if I was going really just at that very kind of tactical level with you, noticing, okay, so making money is a problem, but when I look at your calendar, I don't really look at anything that's about making money. I don't see any time devoted to marketing or blogging or prospecting or getting on the phone or going to conventions or whatever the ways that you might make sales would happen. And even if you don't know how to make sales, at least you're doing something that's an educated guess. I used to help people a lot with that. It's useful to a point, It's useful to a point. It's really useful to practice and to notice what gets in the way, right? When you try to calendar 3 hours to put aside on a Tuesday morning to do some marketing activities, what's hard about making that stick? Like, what tends to have your attention slip away to something else, right? Is it that you get a call from a friend and now you're becoming like their counselor? Or is it that when you go to marketing, actually you just keep watching videos about it, but you never really step into some kind of execution? So, awareness is powerful.
That's why I'm a real fan of people getting what I call calendar integrity, so the ability to...
You might have missed that. That was me saying the difference between Americans talking about calendar and Brits talking about diary, and the expression, I'll put it in the diary, or what have you got in your diary? I kind of miss it. It's a kind of really cool British phrase.
Put something on your calendar and that it happens. I used to run around headless, and still occasionally I can have tinges of this with what I call aspirational calendar. There's a yoga thing going on Saturday. I'll just without any real sense of commitment to it, just as like some kind of mental trigger. But if your calendar just becomes mental triggers without a sense of follow through and commitment to it, you're not actually using it, I think, in the best possible way. Now, you can have some sort of system where...
So this is actually easy for me to take for granted now, because I have a lot of blank space on my calendar. I don't tend to put things on there that are hopeful. But back in the day, that interesting event I'd heard of, that class that's going on at the gym, that Pilates class that I've always thought would be a cool thing to go to, that party that this friend's having. There was a lot of stuff on my calendar, so when I looked at it, it was mostly, or at least partially, aspiration, not these are things I've actually committed to. So learning how to pare that all the way back and only put on, this is something that I can renegotiate, I don't have to do it, but I'm putting it on because that's very much my intention to do it. That was really game changing. So curious if any of you would benefit from that.
You color code things, or you just put them as all day reminders, so that at the beginning of the day you can say, is that something I want to do? But for most of us, I think it's actually developmental to get to that point of calendar integrity, which is like, it goes on the calendar, I mean that I'm going to do it.
Calendar
and
integrity.
If I don't, that I have a commitment to renegotiate that. So it's a kind of binary thing. Either it happens or it doesn't, but I'm proactively and prospectively renegotiating it. So...
proactively and prospectively renegotiating my calendar agreements to stay in calendar integrity. There you go. I think you get what I'm pointing to here. It's good for me just to remember how much that was part of my life. Just how much sort of noise there could be, how many competing demands on my intentions. Actually been one of the real benefits of having a much more hermetic phase of life, is that it's much harder in some senses to kind of get my attention about things, so that most of the time my attention's just a lot more simplified. I actually remember having 3 sessions with a teacher back in 2015-16 where the practice that she gave me was to not be on email for 3 days, to not feel obligated to reach out or reach back to anyone. And that was kind of, at the time, like a shocking thing. I was so into that. I spent so much time sending emails, reaching out to people, replying to emails, just kind of in service of sort of connection and in service of wanting to support people or be supported. But it just was a huge amount of time and energy. And my imagination, for any of you listening to this right now, is that there are probably some things a bit like that you spend quite a lot of time on that other people just don't. And other people, if they spent that amount of time on it, they would imagine getting compensated for it, right? Like you're a friend, but the level at which you're doing friend is like you're actually holding like 30 different people. You are their go-to person. And that's kind of exhausting for you. And no one of them knows the ultimate impact that it has on your life. or maybe there's a way that you just, constantly giving incremental amounts to charities, but it's not actually having a huge impact because it's, really it's just a small amount of money. But it sort of has you feel good, but you don't really have that much choicefulness over it, and you can't really fully support your own foundation. So you've perhaps got this idea that, it's through giving that we create our own foundation, but actually we look at your life, that's not operational. That might be true for someone else, it might have been true for you in another period of time. But we kind of look at the data from now, it's not giving us that impression. So it can be good to check in on this stuff.
Getting control of the calendar in that way can be really useful to us, putting our attention on what's most important to us. And I think that's a big part of living a fulfilled and integrated, successful life. So, thanks for being with me this morning. Hope you have a great start to your day.
So a lot of what this is about is actually leading a more integrated life. I used to have a podcast called the Conscious Change Agent Web Show, and I was trying to find people that understood this sort of inner work, meditative orientation, but who also wanted to be engaged and out there in the world. And it was one sort of version that I could put into the world of, well, let's lead a more integrated life where inner and outer are valuable, where doing and being are valued. And it was neat. Never really got much traction from a marketing perspective because I didn't really have a marketing plan. It's actually the irony of having some things take off, like a video that takes, is that it actually encourages paying attention to what takes. Right? If you've never had anything take, it's almost like it's all just a fog and a bit of a mystery. So it's been a real blessing for me to have some things that have taken just to get more of my attention, and some decisions that I made that I didn't just want to have videos that I spent a lot of time on and only having 10 people watch them and it not really making that much impact to them, than mostly just being friends who are trying to support me. So finding real world problems to help people with is actually a way of really helping people, So let me know, what do you think of this guy? Would you have watched his videos? Does any of this surprise you? Leave me a comment, like this video. Thanks for being with me. I'll be with you soon. This is Jack.